My name is Steve YAMAGUMA. I'm the co-chair of the Silicon Valley Asian Pacific Film Festival. And I'd like to welcome you all to the first in a series of panel discussions titled Telling Our Stories Through Independent Film. That's what we're here for. And we're excited to have a panel of nationally renowned filmmakers who will talk about why storytelling is important to our communities and their journey in bringing the films to the big screen. As our mission is connecting and inspiring communities through the stories of Asian American and Pacific Islanders, we wanted to partner with other organizations to bring you this event. Tonight's event is a partnership with Contemporary Asian Theater Scene, the Silicon Valley Asian Pacific Film Festival, the National Association of Asian American Professionals, or NAAAP San Jose, Collaboration SF, and the Japanese American Museum of San Jose. And I'd also like to thank the museum again for hosting us tonight. And as a reminder, our festival will be held November 1st to the 3rd at the Cine Arts Theater in Santana Row, so mark your calendars. I'd like to invite you to be a film fan, to join us as a sponsor, a patron, or a volunteer. And you can talk to some of our members. Cindy in the back, wave your hand. And she has more information about that if you really want to join us. And before we bring people up, I want to recognize a few people, other partners that we are partnering with. Chad Johnston, CEO of Create TV, is in the back right there. And we just did a PSA at Create TV. It's online, and if you haven't seen it, it's really good. We have some stars like June, Matt, a few others here. Let's see. Sophie Horiuchi, she's the CEO of AARP San Jose. And unfortunately, we got a call. Robert Honda couldn't make it. I know some of you want to meet him, but let's see. There's quite a few others here. Jerry Wong, she's representing Ding Ding TV, which is another partner. Yay! And there's a lot of volunteers here. And if you haven't had a chance to meet everybody, afterwards, reach out, introduce yourselves. And now I'd like to bring up Michael Serra. He's the president of the board of the Japanese American Museum.
Show of hands, how many of you guys have not been to the museum before? Oh my God. Well, that's the reason why we love having these kind of events, because it brings people like you to the museum. Do you know what we're here for? Yeah, that's the right answer. Actually, the museum, why is the museum here? Let me answer that question for you. It's for simply 3 reasons. CPS is to collect, preserve, and share the Japanese American history, culture, and arts with the Greater Bay Area. It's for people like ourselves so that we don't forget this history. Why is it important? Because if we repeat history, we're stupid. And we're almost getting close to that, so we can't not allow us to happen again. So that's the reason why we exist. And that's the reason why it's important for you guys to know this story and share the story. So welcome you guys to this event, and thank you very much for allowing us to partner with you guys. That's it. Thank you.
Well, you can tell he's a professional presenter. I think I have to practice a little bit more. Now I'd like to introduce Dustin and Sarah from Collaboration SF. Come on up.
Hi everyone, I'm part of Collaboration SF. I'm one of the community associates along with Sarah back there. And we're so happy to be here, and I'm happy to see all of y'all faces. And we're just gonna plug our event that we're having on Saturday, and we're having our showcase, which we have 5 local Bay Area artists and musicians who are gonna be competing in front of 3 special judges, and then the winner will be sent to LA for the Los Angeles competition against all the other branches. So if you're free and want to hear some local Bay Area artists play, rap, sing, we do have a little picture frame back there with a little coupon code for y'all and a clipboard if you want to stay up to date with all of our events on our newsletter. Thank you.
Thank you. I also want to recognize Tom Oshidare. He's president? Co-president of San Jose JCL. Dwayne Kubo, he's the founder of the film festival. And he also is the founder of Visual Communications in Los Angeles, the first Asian American media organization in the country. That's Dwayne. He's history. There's many others, but I like to bring up Marinka. Marinka is the president of National Association of Asian American Professionals, and she's going to come in and introduce the moderator. Thank you.
NAAAP San Jose, well, NAAAP as a national organization was actually founded about 35 years ago in New York City, shortly after the Vincent Chin incident. A couple of Chinese businessmen in New York realized that there really wasn't any kind of an organization for Asian Americans at the time to work together, to build community, to actually try and move forward in the business community itself. So NAAAP was founded, and we've actually got 3 major programs that we do. Leadership development, because Asian Americans in the corner offices and the C-suites on boards and nationally throughout the US are severely lacking. So we provide workshops and skills development seminars to actually help Asian Americans gain the skills they need to move up into those positions. We do community service. We believe very strongly in actually giving back to our community. Something as simple as sorting food at a food bank or hosting different types of events. And the third thing we do is networking, because it's not what you know, but who you know. So we actually have a networking event coming up relatively soon. We've had information flying up on the PowerPoint, but you can also go to our website, sanjose.naap.org, for even more information. So, as for our presenter, need my notes. Okay, Stephen Chun. Stephen is pretty much an all-around person when it comes to TV, radio, different types of media. He's pretty much done it all. Anywhere from being an announcer on a cruise ship to his current position right now as an iHeartRadio host. He is no stranger to actually moderating these types of panels. In fact, I met Stephen a couple of years ago at a NAAAP San Jose event where he was our MC and did a fabulous job. So we asked Stephen to actually be the moderator for this event. So Stephen's hosting, reporting, and narration accomplishments include CBS News reporter in San Francisco, documentary film narrator, health and fitness radio talk show host, a casino game show host, a fitness commentator, and an international festival MC. So he is no stranger to being up here in front of a large audience. So please, if you can, help me welcome Stephen Chun.
Well, a very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for coming tonight. It's my honor to be the moderator. And just like Marika said, I am with iHeartRadio. I'm a traffic and news reporter. Also down in Salinas, I'm with KSBW as their traffic anchor. I'm a former assistant cruise director with Royal Caribbean Cruise Lines, as well as an announcer with Disney on Ice. Yes, this is my real voice, and yes, I sound like this at 2 in the morning, which is the alarm clock for my morning show. So, thank you so much for supporting everyone, and all of you are part of this, whether you're a panelist or a sponsor or you're part of just being here tonight. So give yourselves another round of applause, everybody. So before we meet our very talented and very, very fun panelists, we're going to learn about their films with just a quick snippet of each film.
Ed not only fought for Chinatown, he would get married there. On June 20th, 1980, he and Anita exchanged wedding vows at the Salvation Army Church on Powell Street.
My mom is gorgeous. She's gorgeous today, and in her youth was, beautiful. And she really could have dated anybody, I feel. But I think what my dad had on everybody was just his ability to make her crack up.
In 1982, their first daughter, Tanya, was born. 3 years later came Brianna.
He was really just fun all the time. Every time he came home, it was really delightful whenever he came home. It was sort of time for lightheartedness and just having fun, even though he usually came home pretty late at night.
My mom did a lot of the heavy lifting of raising our family when we were young because my dad was so busy. I think, we would really want him to come home for dinner, and he would say, "Oh, I'll be home by 8 o'clock," and it was normal for 8 o'clock to be midnight. It was hard. It was really hard for me, and I could tell it was hard for my mom too.
While a fourth of San Francisco's population is Chinese, it had been woefully underrepresented in city politics. But that began to change in the late 80s when Mayor Art Agnos took notice of Ed and hired him to head up a new whistleblower division.
And I knew when I became mayor that it was no longer going to be sufficient to recognize the Chinese American community by coming to Chinese New Year's dinner parties, saying Gong Hai Fat Choi, and taking a few pictures and leaving. That was the old world. And the new world that was represented by Ed Lee was we had to be far more proactive in empowering the Chinese community.
And we all knew that it would not be long before there would be Chinese officials elected in every category. And believe me, from the time of the late 70s to the present day, that's evidenced itself. None more dramatic than Ed Lee's ascendancy to one of America's most significant cities, San Francisco.
I see your favorite color is black. Are you all into vampires or something?
Something like that.
See you come to daddy.
Me that everything was gonna be okay, that we would be strong again, and that she'd send for me when everything got better. That was so long ago, I just thought she was dead.
Although President Reagan acknowledged that the incarceration of Japanese Americans was a mistake, he stopped short of calling it what it really was: a scandal of epic proportions.
Government lawyers intentionally destroyed and altered and suppressed evidence regarding the loyalty of Japanese Americans. Government lawyers also presented to the court false evidence regarding the commission by Japanese Americans of acts of espionage, acts that the government knew to be false.
It was covered up, but during my few years doing research at the archives, I found the lost 10th copy of the DeWitt report.
The cases that legalized and legitimized the incarceration of these Americans was false. It was a fraud.
Today more than ever, America needs to know the truth. They need to know that not only were Japanese Americans rounded up and incarcerated based on completely false information, but the government knew it, and these facts were deliberately covered up for decades.
It's time for this country to be reminded of the truth and that facts matter. They should have mattered in 1942, and they should matter today.
Does our Constitution indeed protect all of us, regardless of race or culture? Do our rights remain inalienable, even in times of stress?
I'm pleased to bring you here to announce my nomination of Norm Mineta to be the 33rd Secretary of Commerce.
I thank him for accepting my invitation to serve again. Well, one of the important things about Norm's experience is it reminds us that sometimes we lose our soul as a nation, that the notion of all equal under God sometimes disappears. And 9/11 certainly challenged that premise. And in some ways, Norm's example inspired me. Whereas I didn't want our country to do to others what had happened to Norm.
My goal was to be visionary in terms of where are we going in the future and how do we get there.
In the video production department, please help me welcome from the film VAMPARIAH, Matthew Abaya.
Thank you. I appreciate you all coming out today. I'm probably just one out here because
you don't have your fangs or your contacts, right?
Yeah, sometimes like when I'm at these events, I actually am at a lot of comic conventions. You might see me with white eyes and some fangs and stuff. But I'm here to talk a little bit about the kind of films I work on and why I think it's important for Asian Americans to actually pursue doing, I'll say, very different kind of movies.
Thank you. We're going to move next to the co-founder of Bridge Media. It's an award-winning media production company. This individual has over 25 years of television experience. She received an award from the National Academy of Television of Arts and Science back in January of this year, and also former assistant news director with KPIX. Will you please help me welcome from the Mineta legacy, Dianne Fukami. Next, with more than 30 years of local television and sportscasting experience, he became the first Asian American male to be a full-time anchor in the Bay Area. I grew up watching him, I'm sure many of you have too. He's also the first Chinese American TV sportscaster in the industry, Quan. Mayor Edley. And finally, right here to my side, the Executive Director of the JCYC, that's the Japanese Community Youth Council, an award-winning youth organization celebrating their 50th anniversary next year. He received the San Francisco District Attorney's Asian Pacific Islander Heritage Month Leadership Award this last May. From Alternative Facts, here's Jon Osaki. So I guess, Jon, we'll start with you. We watched the trailer of your film. We thought, for some that may not have seen it, oh, it looks like a trailer for a documentary, but it's not just a historical documentary. You're trying to tell about the lives of 9066. What would you like us to walk away from the film if we were to watch it right now?
Well, I think all you have to do is turn on the news today and realize that we are, in fact, repeating a lot of history right now. We are, in fact, stupid and making a lot of the same mistakes. And that, unfortunately, one of the reasons why I did my film is that, as a young person growing up, I'll admit it, that I slept through history class most of the time. And in part because they weren't necessarily telling my history. And they were telling it in a way that resonated with me. And I think so many young people are growing up today. So I've been working with young people for over 30 years. And I think that it's so important to present history in a way that they can connect with, that they can understand, and they can understand how it relates to contemporary issues. And so that's really what I want audiences to walk away with.
Speaking of history and using culture, Matthew, you use folkloric history with a Filipino folklore tale. Can you explain how vampires incorporate with that?
Yeah,
as opposed to maybe an executive order or an exclusion act, but specifically.
Yeah, when I think about Philippines and its history, and especially its historical significance with the U.S., a lot of it is rooted in colonialism. We were a country that was colonized by many groups, including the Spaniards. And oftentimes the vampire, or the aswang as we call it, don't call it anything else, the aswang was actually used a lot to kind of instill fear, that just as religion and other things were. So I felt like it was important to use this creature and try to use it as a symbol of empowerment in the movie.
And then Dianne, in regards to history, you really capture what happened in our political history. Can you talk about not just replaying the life of Norman, but what would you like us to learn just from watching it in regards to how we can learn from him, how his passion was representing the Asian Americans in the cabinet?
People think that this is a biography about Norman Mineta, and it is. But what we really hoped is that people would see that some of the same themes and issues that were part of Mineta's life and legacy are very much evident today. When we're talking about immigration, prejudice, detention, incarceration, racial and social equity, reparations, just a lot of those things. And so I'm hoping that our viewers are able to see Norm's story, connect the dots, and see the connection between what happened with Norm and what's still going on today.
And this is for Rick, a twofold question, Rick. How did you get started from being a sportscaster to filmmaking, and then using Mayor Ed Lee, celebrating his life, using his history, because we're both, who grew up in San Francisco? Born and raised, okay, so mostly kind of South Bay or maybe East Bay, but yeah, very little, this South Bay sounds like proud, right? But how did you get, with transitioning from sports to now documentary, this is your fourth that I've got a chance to support your previous three, and then now this fourth one. But in regards to history, like Jon was referring to, about telling the story of what happened.
Well, I started actually making documentaries while I was still a sportscaster. My first documentary was about a woman named Dorothy Toy, whose real last name is Takahashi, but she changed it because of the times. It was easier for her to be accepted as a dancer and entertainer at that time. I've just always enjoyed telling stories. Even as a sportscaster, you do feature stories about different athletes, what they're really like away from the playing field, or some other interesting aspect about their lives. So I've always enjoyed those type of feature type stories. And so it was kind of a natural progression. Making documentaries allowed me to have more time. Typically in TV news, you're only limited to a couple of minutes to tell a story, but documentaries, you can go a lot more deeper. My first 3 documentaries were approximately 25 minutes each, which for me, that was a long time because I wasn't used to that type of time restrictions. Doing the story on Mayor Ed Lee, I was approached by the Chinese Historical Society to do this documentary just a few months after his sudden passing. I had traveled to Mayor Lee to China when the Warriors played their first 2 exhibition games in October of 2017. During that time, I got to get a little closer to Mayor Lee, going to pregame receptions and little lunches that they were hosting. So when he died 2 months after the trip, I was just shocked and just really stunned by the whole thing. And again, as Steve mentioned, I had done some documentaries before, but none about such a high-profile person. So I was a little bit intimidated by the subject matter. But after the Chinese Historical Society reached out to me and asked me to do it, I just felt like this was like a sign that this is what I'm supposed to be doing. So that's how it came about.
This question is for Jon. I'm quoting you from when you received your award from the San Francisco DA. You said, quote, "In the last few years, I have become very interested in learning from history." What did you personally learn from your film, and what were some of the challenges that you encountered?
Well, I actually learned a ton. So I've actually been here before screening a documentary short that I made about my children's pilgrimage to Tule Lake. And when I was working on that film, I decided that I'd better brush up on my incarceration history, make sure I had all my facts straight. And so during my research, I came across a document called Personal Justice Denied that was done by the Commission on Wartime Relocation and Internment of Civilians. And in kind of diving into that document, I was shocked at how much I didn't know. I've been working in the Japanese American community for over 30 years in San Francisco, so I thought I had kind of an above average knowledge of the incarceration story, and I realized that I really didn't. And I realized even more so that the young people that I've been working with for all these years, if I don't know it, they absolutely don't know it. And so I learned just a ton, and I think that what I've been gratified by is that I think that even those who know a lot about the story actually learn a lot from my film, because I've uncovered a lot of information that frankly the majority of even our own community doesn't know. And so I think I've been very gratified from that process, and I'm very thankful that I'm able to educate a lot of people, not just in the Japanese American community, but in the community all across this country.
And then some challenges, just general. I know we can get specific, and each one has all their challenges when it's
okay, so I'm probably the newbie of the group up here. I probably know the least. I did not go to film school. I have 0 formal training. I'm completely self-taught. So I was completely over my head half the time. I didn't know what I was doing. The one thing I had going for me, though, as a nonprofit executive director, is I knew how to raise money. So I was able to raise money, but Dianne won't admit to this, but I leaned on Dianne up here a lot. I bugged her a lot for advice on how to get things done, and a lot of, and I thankfully brought on a producer who knew what they were doing. And so, together we were able to pull this thing together, but, there was a lot of days where, I'll be honest, I was flying blind on how to pull this off, but somehow we did.
Where did you get the footage? What software did you use? How long did it take from start to finish?
So I was completely new to this, so I, along the way, found out that most filmmakers are using, Adobe product, Premiere Pro. So I actually went to a Premiere Pro boot camp to learn how to do it. And so, I'm literally not even just learning how to make films, but learning how to use the software. Yeah. So I was starting from ground zero, but, I think, and I'm sure all of these, amazing filmmakers up here will say the same thing, that it's really about sheer will. to get these projects done, because there are enormous obstacles. I ran into a piece of footage that I want to use that CBS wanted to charge me $225 a second for. So, you know, there's just, I mean, to be honest, there was constant challenges, but you know, you just, when you feel passionate enough about a project to get it done, you just find a way to overcome them.
Dianne, did he do a good job mentoring under you?
You know, Jon has exceeded.
What for your film? You just corrected us. It can be biographical, but it's actually not. What challenges did you have with your film?
I think raising money is always a really big challenge. And also, you know, outside of our community, people don't really know Norm's name very well. And so we had applied for a grant from the National Endowment for the Humanities. And they usually give grants that are hundreds of thousands of dollars. And we had a very good grant, a very good proposal. We hired a grant writer. And we were told that we made it this close to getting the grant. But you know, sorry, Norma Mineta just isn't quite sexy enough. And so it didn't matter whether, you know, the issues were relevant, it didn't matter that we were talking about an important part of history. We could, you know, got to the point, and I'm sure you guys know this, you call somebody or they see you and they turn the other way because they think you're going to hit them up for money, right? But we were really lucky. There's a philanthropist down in Southern California named Dr. Paul Terasaki, who has since passed. And he's about the same age as Norm, and his experience as a self-made man, although in the biology industry, really resonated with the challenges that Norm had gone through. And he wanted people in this country to understand what Japanese Americans had gone through and how they sort of pulled themselves by their bootstraps and try to make a go of it. So, you know, our co-producer, Deborah Nakatomi, a really talented, wonderful woman who could sell snow to Eskimos, basically talked to Dr. Terasaki, and next thing you know, he'd given us a grant for $500,000.
Wow.
So when that first money comes in, that really changes everything, because now, getting first money is really, really hard. But once you get some money, and especially that amount, people realize that no matter what, the film's going to be made. And they can be a part of it or they cannot be a part of it. Well, you know, everybody likes a winner, right? And everybody likes Norm. And so after that, the money wasn't so hard to raise.
I literally was just going to ask you, were there any surprising angel investors? And you definitely just answered the question right on the tack. Distribution. Let's ask Matthew, what challenges did you have with distribution? Because not only was your film, but you had music videos in it that you produced and promoted. And you also promoted the musicians as well. You also make music videos. But in regards to distribution, what challenges did your specific film encounter?
Well, I mean, just making a film like this is really, really one of the most challenging kind of films, I think, sometimes, because, you know, it's like I would almost like to call it something more like a mockbuster, because it's like, you know, we would aspire to this multi-million-dollar budget to make a movie that has all the bells and whistles that you went to go see Endgame with, right? I mean, that's the kind of movies I know a lot. I enjoy. I know a lot of young people, a lot of my young students that I've taught enjoy. And when trying to get distribution for a film like this, it's actually not that challenging, I guess, for this kind of genre. It's actually more of making it.
Why'd you pick this genre? Why not martial arts? Why not
Well, it is a martial art
rom-com?
film. It just happens to have us. You know, so we went to boot camp for a whole month before shooting this, just to make sure that we were not going to get all winded right before shooting a scene. You know, it's like, all right, again. You know, it's like that's hard. You know, I train with them too, by the way. I don't just sit there and watch them do push-ups. Yeah, a few more push-ups, right? No, but I think this genre is really important because, you know, it's the kind of stuff that we watch. You know, it's like I know that in the past years we've been seeing a lot of films like comic book-esque kind of movies where they could have casted an Asian lead, but they chose Scarlett Johansson, who's also in Endgame. But, you know, it's like, why didn't they pick an Asian actress to play this? And I know that, and I said, okay, I can pitch this film that's kind of a cool, quirky horror film with action and violence based on Philippine folklore. And I can guarantee they might tell me that I would probably put a few $1 million as budget, but the casting, you know, that's where it becomes very, very different. It's a very different show when you start to pitch a film that way. And I guess that's why I felt like, well, I'm just gonna do it myself. And you know, I might be really underfunded to do something like this, but there is a market for this, and clearly a distributor picked it up and puts it out there, so it's on Amazon Prime now.
All right. Okay, so we got the funding, folks, and we got the distribution. Rick, can you tell us now about how to get the screening going, how to get the audience, how to fill those seats? Got a chance to, well, I got a chance to see all of your films because it's screened at my festival, but the most recent one, Mayor of Italy, was at Herbst Theater in San Francisco off Van Ness, and it was sold out. It was full to the brim. I was all the way up top, not by choice. And how did you do that? And also that'll be to all of us, how do we fill the seats to build the audience?
That really wasn't my area of expertise, to be honest with you. Working with the Chinese Historical Society, they were the ones who marketed the film. And so they reached out to their members, to the Asian community, tried to drum up the interest. I did cut a couple of trailers to show people what to expect if they came to see the film. But they were the ones who rented the venue, negotiated with the people, sent out the invitations. And so my job was mostly just come up with the product and make it look good.
So this is kind of an advice for the up and coming or current filmmakers to team up with an organization that will obviously be funding you in the project, but also to be sponsoring you and hosting like we're doing now.
Right, that certainly helps. That's half the game right there, so.
Okay. John, same question. When you did have the screening here, if you didn't have the help of them here, how would you have filled the house?
Well, I think that, I certainly agree with Rick 100%. I think that having local groups that have, constituents, members that they can reach out to makes a huge difference. I also think that, to the degree that we all try to make sure that we are constantly, pushing out information about our films through social media and through different platforms. And I think that for my film, the thing that we really have tried to push through our marketing is the fact that the story is so relevant to today, that it's really something that, again, I focus a lot of my films on the fact that documentaries are generally not made for younger audiences, and that's something that I really try to emphasize, and that the fact of the matter is that the demographic that I'm trying to reach, and oftentimes they're not taught this in school, their families never talked about it, and our country is actually trying to forget it. And so we are trying to find a way where we can appeal to them in a way that makes them understand how it connects to what they're seeing every day today on the news.
You brought up a very good point about social media, not only to promote, but I want to ask Dianne in regards to social media. Who's a filmmaker here, by the way? Even if you are from a production assistant to the actual director, writer. Okay, good. So everyone's just paying attention and kind of taking internal notes. Social media. 60-second Instagram. That's the max, barely, right? When I post and try to, hey, I'm emceeing tonight, I try to make a little snippet, 10 seconds, too long. That's kind of our attention span these days. Dianne, where's the future of films? Are they gonna be 25 minutes, 60 minutes, or are we gonna have to cut it and cut it and cut it, and we're gonna miss some scenes because it's too long? But what do you think?
Stephen, I'm going to go back to a previous question.
Yes.
About distribution, because my story is a little bit different than their story.
Okay.
The film was never intended as film festivals being the primary outlet. We always knew from the beginning we wanted the most eyeballs as possible, and we were too stupid to know that getting something on a national PBS broadcast was a huge, different achievement that had not been done very much by the Asian American community. But because we didn't know better, we kept on going for it, and we got it. And it was amazing, but that film, the fundraising and the production and the marketing and the outreach took 6 years. And I think everybody here will understand, you don't turn something like that in just a little while. It takes a really long time. So the film festival and the screenings that it's enjoying around the country and community groups is sort of icing on the cake. We believe that what Norm stands for and the issues that are so relevant today, we want as wide an audience as possible. And so for us, you know, that national broadcast really sort of was just wonderful. Now going back to the future, you know, I was really surprised because I have kids who are about some of your ages. And I didn't realize that so many of them nowadays are watching a lot of documentary, particularly on Netflix, you know? And so my son-in-law, for instance, I mean, they watch a lot of docs. And I always thought that the things that I was creating were only for an older PBS type audience, you know? But there seems to be a real appetite for that. What I also noticed is that because there were so many vehicles for content, that although we may think that TV and films are dying, there's so much content providers, and they want stuff. And you know, I'm hoping that many of you young filmmakers who are here today, we inspire you that go out and do it.
Matthew, what do you think about social media and the history of docu-films and filmmaking in general?
Oh boy, I definitely know I'm telling my students to put that phone down every once in a while because they have to learn how to use some of the equipment. But I think it's really exciting that anybody can just kind of make a movie with just like a tool that they make a phone call on. I mean, there's something really, really exciting about that, and I guess we have to kind of almost reestablish what is the medium to really reach the people. It seems like I've been told it's something I should be making content for Instagram more, like making more micro films. Sometimes that reaches bigger audiences than some of the longer films. So we honestly don't even know. I mean, actually, I really don't know the 100% answer to this question. I just know that there's just these new avenues that just weren't around when I was a little kid. You know, they were saying I'm the MTV generation, in case you didn't know, but that was a 3-minute because I waited all day for my favorite song to come on, and I still waited all day for that. I didn't hit YouTube or nothing, and it's such a different world that, you know, you can click that song, that piece of something on an instant, right? You know, and your attention span is also way shorter than my 3-minute attention span. So it's a new medium. I'm really excited to see where this thing goes, but I really don't know if I have a really good answer for that. I just know that we need to make more content that reaches the younger people like that.
Dianne brings up a really good point that Netflix does have a lot of documentaries in all different genres and interests. Can you talk about, Dianne, when you started and storyboarded and versus the finished product, how much of it changed or it kept to true of the storyboard?
You know, I'm going to shock some of you. I never storyboard. I have an idea in my head, and then I do an outline based on what I think the story will be. And because I work in the documentary genre, you find out that more often than not it doesn't work the way that you thought it was going to, you know? And you just sort of go with it. So you know there are key people you want to interview. You know you want to listen attentively and figure out what are the best sound bites from them. And you know there are key, for me, historical points or message points that you want to convey. And then it just sort of makes itself. You know, I love putting stories together because it can go in so many different directions. With this particular story, I knew that we wanted to talk to May Mineta, who is Norm's first wife, and many of you here in San Jose know her. But I knew that would be difficult because she's a very private person and had never spoken before publicly. That was a real challenge for us because it humanized the story. It gave her a visibility that she hadn't had for a very long time, and it just sort of works. It was a human part, and also it didn't make Norm look like that this was a vanity piece. I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought.
No, we're listening.
But I do want to.
In regards, I mean, you kind of.
Storyboarding.
Correct, you kind of confessed to it. You didn't storyboard and you just.
That's what happens when you get old, right? You just don't remember your turn it
But
on.
you were talking about the key few points that you had, the key interviews. You nailed them and you tacked them down, and this is the finished product.
Well, it took 2 years to get both President and Clinton and Bush to say yes, you know? And that was just a lot of haranguing. I don't consider myself a particularly tenacious person, although these two might argue with you. But I just knew that that's what we needed to get. That's what we wanted to get. And so we just kept on right at it. So yes, it did turn out a little differently. It didn't end the way I thought it was going to end. The thing that blew me away the most was the question that I asked Norm about why he always wears this American flag pin. And you know, Norm's a real patriot, so I thought I was going to get some, you know, kiss-off answer about how patriotic he is. And when he said to me, oh, this pin, I wear this pin because there are times when I feel like a foreigner in my own country. I was not expecting that response. And so what you don't see is me silently crying off camera as I'm asking him to explain this. And I'm sort of incredulous because I said to him, you know, you have like more than 50 years of public service. You've proved yourself in so many ways. You still feel like a foreigner in this country? And he said, oh yeah. And then I started just naming different incidents in his life. And you know, Norm is always very upbeat and very optimistic, but he keeps track of all those things. And it was a moment that I hadn't storyboarded mentally.
Jon, how about you? How was your process from beginning to end, from concept to distribution, as we mentioned at first?
So I made a feeble attempt at storyboarding. I have no training, so I don't even know if I did it correctly. But I think I agree with Dianne 100% that I think as we identified who we wanted to shoot and we listened to their stories, I think the story sort of just started to make itself, and we just started to follow where it took us. And I mean, a ton of things surprised us from those interviews, things that we didn't even expect were going to come forward. We learned new things, we learned new stories, things that frankly hardly anybody had ever heard before, and they just eventually found a way to fit together. So I think it is very much a organic process of, as you listen to people, it definitely takes you into different directions. And I think for me, not being trained, it was just very much I went with my gut. I went with what felt like it resonated the most with me, and I just sort of listened to that. And that's how we got to the end product.
Jon, we were talking before the panel. It's a full-time job, and you're going to some red states you were mentioning. Talk about that and where it's going next.
So one of the things that we're very interested in doing. So I mean, what really was the deciding factor in us making this film really was the 2016 presidential election. And the fact that during that campaign, it was just shocking to me, and I know a lot of people probably in this room, that educated elected officials are coming forward and talking about how we once had to lock up Japanese Americans, and that was precedent for what we might have to do to Muslim Americans. And it was just stunning to me when I had grown up believing that most of this country understood that what a horrible mistake it was. And so at that point, it was clear to me how ignorant this country really is becoming about our history. And so one of the things, you kind of look forward, and I didn't realize it would be this horrible, but you kind of had an idea what was coming in the next few years. So it was always our intention to, of course, show our film on the West Coast and the two coasts, but we really wanted to take it into Middle America. We wanted to take it into the Midwest, into the South, into communities where, my daughter, when she went away to college, she came home on a break one day, said, "Dad, I'm meeting kids from all over the country." And at one point, the topic of the incarceration of Japanese Americans came up. And she said, "Dad, these kids that I'm meeting from other parts of the country, they have no idea that this even ever happened." And so, that's what's been really motivating me to, try to get this on the road into, in front of audiences who frankly they don't know this story.
Rick, can you tell us, you got to interview Hillary Clinton, and in your Q&A with Ben Fong Torres in San Francisco, you were mentioning, get the soundbite first and then the story will tell. But then Dianne just said, as she was interviewing people, the story told itself. Can you kind of encompass all of that? Does it really matter who you're interviewing, or is it the content of what they've said that tells the story of what you thought the storyboard was?
Well, well, for me it was both. In most projects, when we set out to do the documentary on Mary Lee, we consulted pretty closely with the family on who we thought, or who they thought we should interview, who knew him the most, because I didn't know his childhood friends, I didn't know his family members, and things like that. So we made a list of about 30 people that we wanted to interview for this documentary. So I always believe you put your story together by the best sound bites you get from the people you interview and the best visuals you have. If you don't have a visual of something, you're not going to write to that. So those are the two things I used to put together the documentary. As you mentioned, Hillary Clinton, we did include Hillary Clinton, just to backtrack a little bit. Hillary and Mary Lee had become good friends when she was campaigning for president in 2016. And there was a strong belief that if she had been elected, then she was going to name him to her cabinet. So we really wanted to talk to Hillary, but because she was just so busy, she kept putting us off, saying, we would like to do it, but I can't do it this time. Anyway, we wanted to premiere it in February. We couldn't wait any longer for Mrs. Clinton, so we just went on without her. A week before the premiere, her PR person calls me and says, hey, Hillary's so interested in doing this, can we do it? And I said, well, you know, we're done, but if you want to reschedule this, we can, and I'll re-edit the documentary and include her in it. So that's what we did. We flew to New York City in March. She gave us 15 minutes to talk to her. She's very gracious. I didn't even provide her the questions. She knew what to say, and she gave us some great sound bites for the interview. So she appears 3 times in the revised version of the documentary. But when you don't have the sound bites, I mean, another person that was missing, I don't know, has anybody seen the documentary, Mary Lee? No? Okay, Jerry has. One person that's missing from the documentary is Mary Lee's wife, Anita. And she was very emotional. She kept saying, Rick, I don't want to do it, I'm going to cry if I get interviewed. And I said, but you're so crucial to the story. I mean, you're his wife for 30 odd years. We need you. But she kept insisting, well, maybe later, maybe later. You know, finally, you know, came time that we have to either do it or don't do it. And she still said, I can't do it. So, so you just have to still carry on the story in your own mind, with or without her. She might have made the story better, I don't know, but you know, you work with what you have, and fortunately we did have a lot of good information from her daughters, Mary Lee's family members, his mother, brother, and sister. So anyway, so that's how I put together the story.
Speaking of story, Dianne, how did you get started? I mean, you did a TV series back in 2005, Diet Doctor. Also Props 2007, another documentary 2004, Stories from Tohoku. But how did you get all started? You have a news background, you were an assistant news director, and now you're making amazing films.
Work-life balance. You know, I had been working in the TV industry in a fast-paced newsroom for nearly 15 years. And when I started there, I was fresh out of college, so I grew up in that newsroom and I loved it. But then along the way, I got married and I had 2 daughters. And working in a newsroom is very demanding. And so, you know, like a lot of parents, I didn't feel like I was doing a very good job at either one. And so decided to leave, but had to figure out what my next move was. But luckily, at that point, KPIX had been approached by Chinese Affirmative, no, CACA, what's that?
The Chinese American Citizens Alliance.
Okay, that. Chinese Citizens Alliance.
Chinese American Citizens Alliance.
And they wanted to do a documentary about the anniversary of the repeal of the Chinese Exclusion Act. And they wanted KPIX to broadcast it. But no one on the team had TV experience, and I was now out of the newsroom. So they asked me if I'd be happy to consult on it, and I said sure. And then after that, KCSM, public TV station in San Mateo that no longer exists, asked me if I would do a series of documentaries on the Japanese American experience for their series called The New Americans, and that's sort of how that whole documentary thing got started.
Work-life balance, John, we were talking also before the panel, and you were saying you do your executive director full-time job at Japanese Community Youth Council, and also now as a filmmaker's a full-time job. For all of us that are learning filmmaking, should we be full-time filmmakers, or should we have our 9 to 5 and then double up and be a part-time filmmaker? Work-life balance, what's your opinion on that? Or advice, I should say.
Well, so, let me just put it this way. It's been asked me, you know, don't you want to just pursue films full-time? And my answer is, you know, I really like to eat. And so it's, you know, and as I've, you know, been at festivals and met other other filmmakers, I think it's very common to have a day job. And so now running a nonprofit is my day job. And, you know, and I think that there are very few, probably, filmmakers who are lucky enough to be able to make a living on it in a way where they don't have to do anything else. But probably the rest of us have to, you know, we have to have, you know, supplemental income in order to make these films. And I think for me, I'm very fortunate that a lot of what I want to do, it very much aligns with my work in the nonprofit community, and it also very much aligns with the fact that, you know, that deep down inside, I'm an activist. That's really what I do on a regular basis, and film is just now a new way for me to be an advocate and an activist around issues. And so the themes of my film are playing itself out right now. I know there is a vigil here in San Jose, Japantown tomorrow. We have a press conference in San Francisco about how the treatment of migrant children and how we have reestablished concentration camps in this country. So it's very much aligned with what I do on a regular basis. And so I'm just very fortunate that I've so far figured out a way to do both.
Thank you. Matthew, in your opinion on work-life balance, if we're as lucky as John that everything kind of meshes up, but how about you? What is your opinion, your advice? You teach students, many of us here are students in filmmaking.
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge. I will say that much, because I mean, when you don't make a lot of money and you can't generate a lot of money for your projects, you're working a lot, and I know that one of the questions I keep getting asked a lot is like when I'm working on a film, it's like, why is it taking so darn long? Like, okay, so you know the movie that you go see in the Hollywood theater, when they announce they're gonna make it, how long have you waited for that movie to show up? You know, about maybe a year or two. Okay, so imagine that is a highly financed movie that has like multi-million dollars on it, and it takes you about 2 to 3 years sometimes to see that movie come to fruition. And you're asking a person who's doing it on their own, how are you doing it? You know, so it's just putting it in perspective. You know, if it takes you like 4 or 5 years to make a film, you know what? That's about normal, if not more. So you know, so if anybody out there is working on a film and wondering, oh gosh, I'm not turning it out by the end of the year, that's fine. That's cool. That's cool. It's all right. And I've been working on various different jobs. I mean, I don't know if you guys know that teachers don't make that much money. Yeah, so you know, that has been my life, and I like to storyboard a lot.
Great, Dianne can work with you.
Anyway,
Matthew, continue on as a closing. We're going to move on to your Q&A, but I'd like each of our panelists to now promote and tell us what's next for your film. Matthew?
Well, right now, again, it's you can currently watch it on Amazon Prime. And raise your hand if you got Amazon Prime. If you you guys all can watch it. All you gotta do is type that name VAMPARIAH. It's written on the side of the wall there, and you guys can actually watch this film right now.
Are you gonna make a sequel? Are you going to make distribute it or move across the country with this? Enter in other film festivals?
Yeah, it kind of ran its course with the film festivals. It's been pretty much it won top honors like in Hong Kong Film Festival, in New York, and one of my favorite places that this film is screened was Transylvania.
Perfect.
Weird. But they kind of you know, I was flying the U.S. and the Philippine flag for me. I was like, whoa, this is kind of cool. I got the U.S. and the Philippine flag. I better represent both countries pretty okay with this Aswang, this vampires from both countries sort of thing. I don't know. But right now I'm working on a film called Die After Now. It's been something I actually did a fundraiser. I got a little bit of money, but I'm actually still talking with some people. So hopefully before the end of the year, I'll have some idea about when we're actually going to get this film up and going. This is a fun little action sci-fi adventure, and again, you know, with Asian American characters.
Dianne, what's the next step for Norman?
We're still doing some screenings, and there's a lot of interest around the country for people to come and for people to see the film and for Norm to speak, which we're trying to do. But also, you know, I left some postcards back there. The reason why we're calling this the Minetta Legacy Project is it's not just about the film. You know, those of you in the filmmaking business, you know that you have a very short shelf life. And so what we decided very early on is that we were going to create in parallel an educational curriculum that was going to be available online for free. And so with Stanford University's SPICE program, we created a curriculum for high school and college kids. And it's going to be finished in fall as soon as I finish editing all the videos. And so the postcards back there, one side of it is about the film itself. The other side is about the online free curriculum.
Will PBS be screening it, filming it, airing it again?
So when you sign a PBS contract, you give away 4 years and 6 runs.
Oh, okay, and which first run was?
May 20th.
Great, so
Yeah.
we got 5 more to look at.
Yeah, but also DVDs. We have DVD rights, and so those are going to be available in September. So you can also get one by getting a hold of us on our website.
Rick, what is the next step for the mayor of Lee?
Well, thank you for asking. Tomorrow morning, I'm actually flying to Houston, Texas for the OCA National Convention, and we're going to be showing the film on Friday in Houston. And then from Houston, I'll be flying on Monday to Boston for the Chinese American Citizens Alliance Convention, National Convention in Boston, and we'll show it there on July 2nd in Boston. And then we are planning a screening in Seattle, which is Mayor Lee's hometown, in September. So that's the immediate plans. Just today, by coincidence, I started a GoFundMe campaign for my next documentary, which is about a man named Y.C. Hong, who was the first Chinese American immigration attorney in the state of California, probably one of the first in the entire country. He worked during the Chinese Exclusion Act. As you well know, there was very restrictive laws about Chinese immigration at that time. But he helped over 7,500 families immigrate from China. And what also caught my eye about him, he was only 4 foot 6 inches tall. He had an accident when he was a child and it stunted his growth. But despite those odds, he still became one of the top lawyers and top community leaders in the entire country. So if you have a chance tonight, Google Y.C. Hong. You can find out more about the man on GoFundMe. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. And then finally, John, we mentioned Cleveland, end of July?
Cincinnati.
Excuse me, Cincinnati. What's after Cincinnati?
So we're going to continue so we're kind of just still getting started with our festival run, but as I said, we are very much targeting Middle America, the South, those kind of communities. We'll be screening in Pennsylvania in September, and you know, we will continue to kind of target those areas. I think for in November, we're going to be screening at the National Asian Pacific American Bar Association Convention in Austin, Texas, and I think that we are, the other thing that I'm personally very interested in is educational distribution. I really want to bring my film to college campuses. I want to not just show it there, but I want to have dialogue with young voters about what is going on in this country, what their responsibilities are as citizens, as you know, voters in this country, and I kind of committed to continuing that until November 2020. You can kind of guess what that is.
Dialogue, we definitely need dialogue. Let's give our panelists a big round of applause. Stay where you are, panelists. We're going to have our Q&A.
I guess my question would be, as a young filmmaker who just graduated and from the film program at San Jose State University, right over there, what can you recommend for a young filmmaker? Because as you know, LA or South Bay is where, or South Bay, South SoCal is where most of the work for filmmaking and essentially filmmaking as general. That's where most of the work is. Whereas here in the Bay Area, it's very, very scarce and scarce. Would you recommend for someone who just, for young filmmakers who want to essentially improve their skills or improve as storytellers, to just make the move down to LA, or sorry, Bay Area filmmakers to make the move to LA and try to like build up experience and make contacts there, or rather to stay in the Bay Area and essentially hone their skills here? Because because of the film, while there is a film presence here, it's not as big as like Hollywood at all.
Are you actually thinking about doing a lot more like narrative filmmaking? Like
more narrative.
Okay.
Yes.
This is good. Really good question. I've never actually moved to LA, so I can't really speak to actually moving to LA. But I know that a lot of my friends do. A lot of people actually think I'm from LA because of the kind of style of filmmaking I'm doing. And I had one guy who was on my crew. He was really awesome. He was one of the actors in the film, and I know that he's still based here, but he just jumps on to various film shoots. And then when you get on film shoots, believe it or not, you just get experience. That's actually something, to me, honestly, that's the best film school, is just being on a set. Even if it's a small set, you actually start to build contacts. And once you build these contacts, you can start saying, okay, who has a shoot? And eventually, maybe you might be working for free for a while. You're just building your ropes, right? But you work under somebody who's getting paid. They will actually say, you know what? I've seen him. He's good. He's going to be somebody that we can count on. I mean, even if you're just getting a coffee at first, I know that's kind of a cliche, right? But somebody who's reliably able to come and say, what do you need? I got you, right? That's how you learn. You just be on somebody else's film set. You could go to LA. You could totally do that. I should have done that a long time ago sometimes, I think. But if you can stand your ground. Clearly, we're all still here, right? It's like,
John, would you like to answer that in regards, you're self-proclaiming you're a rookie, you just started? I don't think so. You did great work. But
total rookie. I honestly, I don't have any great advice for you. I think that you kind of got to follow the work for a while and get I agree 100% with what Matthew said. I just learned a ton by jumping in and doing it, and by setting up shoots and messing up and getting poor sound and then having to reshoot and
dub it over again.
Absolutely. I mean, you absolutely have to find, just get in there and get as much experience as you can. Because I really think, part of what I was hoping to do, so I talked Dianne at one point into doing a film with me, which I still intend to do. But, part of it, but what I found when I started pursuing that other film is it was very difficult to get traction on it, to raise money for it. And I know for a fact that part of it I had no track record as a filmmaker. And so part of what I knew I had to do was get a track record, get some experience, get some festivals and awards and different things under my belt where at least I started to look legitimate. And so I think that was the road that I took, and hopefully it'll lead to me being able to do other films.
I have another question for you. Do you have a film that you have in mind?
Multiple. Currently I'm writing many short films, mainly to work with many of the graduates from San Jose State University, or currently most of the film students at San Jose State, in order to maintain my contacts and to essentially make sure that we keep working even during the summer.
So those are the people you're going to be also able to work with. I'm sorry, I just really want to make sure I'm helping you with this question, because like when you are actually out on shoots, maybe you are working on somebody else's student shoot, you're also building people who can help you put that vision together. So just be clear on your vision, because the same thing with the film I made, it's like a lot of the people were people I just met along the way. It was a long journey of working on so many countless different shoots and building up just a big group of people who just had enough enthusiasm and skills to be able to pull that off. So I think you could do it, just build off your contacts and just be on shoots and just do that as much as you can.
Matthew, I think you found your next mentee here.
Yes.
Next student.
Sorry.
Anytime.
Yes, please.
There are a lot of shoots that don't have anything to do with film or art, like just commercial shoots.
Right.
And
Day job.
and just like he says, you know, when I do those kinds of shoots, we're always looking for crew members who are eager, willing to help, willing to come early, willing to be there on time, you know, that kind of stuff. And that will give you a lot of skills and craftsmanship in terms of lighting, shooting, even some editing possibly. Also, our industry is very relational. And so the more contacts and the more networks that you make. But the other thing is that everyone's looking for content, you know. You have so many technical tools at your disposal now that we never did. iPhones shoot tremendous video nowadays, and you probably have a better camera than an iPhone, but okay. So what I'm saying is you can create actually really good product on an iPhone, and you know, with desktop editing now, put something up on YouTube. People are always looking at YouTube for ideas, for ways of expansion, you know, for this or that, and so there's a lot of things you can do without having to go down to LA. When you go down to LA, there's going to be a lot of competition, so you've got to figure out a way to make yourself stand out, or have already a network in place.
Building off what Dianne said, you know, Steven Soderbergh shot his last 2 films using an iPhone 7. You know, it shows how the industry has changed. I don't know if you know that, but it's amazing. Before I did the documentaries too, I also did a lot of wedding shoots, and I also did a lot of biographical, like these folks at the church that I attend, they're getting up in age and they wanted to leave something for their grandkids. So they said, can you film me, let me tell my story so I can pass it on to other generations. So I did a lot of those. And by doing those, you do learn certain storytelling techniques and how to frame the picture and what sounds good and what do you need to make the story complete. So there are different steps you can take to working on a big film. But those are some of the things that I did to kind of hone my craft. And plus I did learn how to edit too. I like the creative process of editing. So.
Did you get all that? You taking notes?
Yes.
It's a lot, right?
It is, yes.
Okay. Well,
Thank you so much.
It's a good question though.
Yeah. And the panelists will be available for a meet and greet after, just to deep dive if you'd like to ask them questions. Do we have other audience members? Yes, right next door there.
Hello, my name is Catherine Kanyaba. I'm just here today because as an Asian American, I have a deep interest in Asian American culture and history, and also I'm here as a film enthusiast. So thank you all for coming today to speak. I just have a question for Matthew Abaya. I'm interested I do have Amazon Prime. I am going to watch a movie.
Thank you.
I'm curious to hear how your process was, because you said there's martial arts in the movie, and I'm also a martial artist myself. I know you're saying that these big Hollywood productions, they've got by choreographer, at least one, and then they've got this big process and how that works. So how did that work for you, having basically just yourself to make that all happen?
Yeah, first off, I'm not really a martial artist, although I aspire to it. I do boxing and everything like that, but you know, I had people that knew martial arts with me. I had people who were really trained at it, and they were willing to come in and help set up a boot camp. And that was, a lot of them did come in already with some martial art training. So the people who were not the creatures hadn't actually know the martial arts, and I was like, the ones who weren't, like you know, the ones who were playing creatures, and it's like, okay, just know how to claw and do stuff, but they still trained with us because they had to be able to not get winded between takes and things like that. Because stamina is really, really important when doing these kind of films. I really am a chronic storyboarder. I love storyboarding. I draw like the entire movie. I think I've been known to have more of the storyboard with me than the script, and I have to go to the script supervisor, which is the person who just monitors. Did they say, is this going right? You know, but I would have my storyboard, and I'm like, all the time with whatever the scene is, and especially when you're telling like a fight scene, you know, it's a matter of being able to set up the shots and knowing that you're telling the story that you want to tell with it. And yeah, so what kind of martial artist are you? I didn't ask you.
Which styles do I study?
You said you're a martial artist.
Yes.
You said.
I study Filipino martial arts, Jeet Kune Do, which Bruce Lee developed.
Oh, sweet.
Wing Chun and Silat, and Muay Thai.
Yes, and so we did MMA style kind of fighting in this.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your question. We have a few more questions. Time for a few more left.
Hi, my name's
name's Cody Chan. I'm a student also, and me being a student, raising money for like personal projects is kind of like an enigma to me. So I just wanted to ask, like, could you guys go like a little more in depth on like how you guys raise money for your projects?
So like specific steps, not just I had to ask someone, but the actual procedure.
And especially for Matthew too, since I'm more interested in narrative kind of films too. Since, yeah, that's my question.
I love documentaries. No, but yeah, it's like, it's one of the most expensive things to do, you know, but the good thing is, like when I first started making films, and I'm gonna date myself just a little bit here, I started off shooting on something called Super 8, which was actual film. And the films, this is when I started film school, and it's like we would have to actually process it. It would take, when we shot it, it would take like a week to even see what we even shot, and then, oh great, it's all overexposed, great. I just spent a good $50 on 3 minutes of useless footage. So nowadays, like sensor and you know little cards that can shoot 4K video is just changed everything. If you just got the right software, you have the right camera that you feel comfortable using, you could make some pretty beautiful art with stuff that I only dreamed about when I first started film school. So I wouldn't obsess too much about the budget too much nowadays. I think that you could pull off something really good. It's again, coming back to our first thing is building up like your network of people that you can work with and make the real good story that you want to make. But as far as raising funds, I mean, I did crowdfunding as one of my means.
Have you crowdfunded or helped someone do it? Can you just briefly, literally walk us through sign up, put your email down?
Kickstarter, Indiegogo, there's these websites out there, and you can just kind of build your project. But I will stress that if you're going to do those sites, really plan your marketing, plan out what is the project, be very clear about it, because I know that projects that don't sound too well thought out, they don't usually make the money, and I know that what it feels like to not be successful with sometimes doing it.
Because you have to sell it on crowdfunding.
Really?
It's not just, please give me $10,000 for my project.
Yes.
You have to treat it like a specific Instagram account. You have to post, you have to tease, you have to put deadlines and perks at the end.
Extremely important. Like we would just have, like friend had t-shirts, so just being able to have t-shirts that had, I should have worn it today. I came from work, sorry guys. So having a t-shirt that has like the film title on it, that's already like doing quite a bit. If there's like music from track artists or something, just have perks for what you're doing as well.
Dianne, I actually asked Dianne because she was able to get a lot of funding.
She was able to get way more than me.
So we're talking about from crowdfunding, from the grassroots approach, and then you got this huge amount of money.
I think the first thing to do is to get a fiscal agent, a nonprofit fiscal sponsor. That way, you're going to have to pay them an administrative fee, probably about 10% is the going rate. But that means that anybody who writes you a check, they can take it as a tax deduction, at least during the, until the tax law changes.
Dan, how do you find fiscal agents? How do you?
Well, there's the Film Arts Council. There's a lot of nonprofit film organizations in the Bay Area. So look into that, attach yourself to one. They will have some requirements to take you on as a case. You're going to have bookkeeping skills. You're going to have to show what you use the money for. You're going to present a budget, because they don't want to be the middleman for you scamming everybody, right? But that will help you at least establish some legitimacy. And then what we did for Minetta is we actually had a three-pronged fundraising scheme. One is big donors and corporations. One was mid-level up to and including $1,000. And crowdsourcing was going to be our last capstone kind of thing. But in the meantime, we weren't turning money away from anybody, but we weren't ready to launch the crowdfunding, because crowdfunding, as Matthew said, is really, really tricky. First of all, make sure you go with the right crowdfunding organization, because some of them, they'll keep the money if you don't raise what you're supposed to, or they'll take a big chunk of it out. So you want to be very, very smart. Yeah, and it's not tax writeable. It's not tax write-off. So you want to be very, very smart about that, and also you want to have a lot of that money kind of guaranteed before the crowdfunding thing comes, because people like momentum. People like to see that they're a part of something that is going to be successful. So if you're starting from zero, and let's say your goal is $10,000, and you're doing that from ground zero, it's better to have about $5,000 to $7,000 already locked up mentally, and so that you can start seeding that crowdfunding, and your fans will see and supporters will see that going up, and they'll get really excited and want to donate.
Dan, would you say that the takeaway is you must have a business plan? I mean, just kind of a general umbrella term?
At least a strategy for raising. So you should know what number you need to raise and how you're going to go about doing it.
Okay.
Think big too, by the way.
Because it's always more expensive.
Well, I'm thinking for him just being a student, I mean, crowdfunding is the way to go. He's not going to hire some agent. That's just, she had a nice big project with a big, well-known figure. But the experience I've had.
You don't hire an agent.
When
you go like to Film Arts Council, they just take 10% of whatever they bring.
Okay. Well, my projects, I've shot for like $10,000. I mean, that for me is compared to what their budget was, it's like peanuts. But I always try to put together a short little trailer to try to get across the idea of what I'm trying to sell here. Because visually, you want people to see what you're seeing. Also, just talk to all your friends and relatives, try to get them on board, to try to get the bandwagon rolling for you, and at least get those first donations like Dianne mentioned, get that momentum going. And then, again, I mentioned I'm going to Houston and Boston, so I made sure I put together a short trailer for this upcoming documentary I'm doing, so I can show it after the Mayor Ed Lee documentary and say, hey, hopefully I got you excited about Mayor Lee. This is my next project. If you'd like to be a part of it, you can contribute to this website, GoFundMe. And for $50, you get your name on the credits. So that's how I approach that type of thing.
The way that I approached fundraising was I actually self-produced a couple of short films they're basically zero budget films, things that I did on my own. I edited myself. And then when I had those films, what I did is I found venues to show them. And I think that was helpful for me for a couple reasons. One is making the shorts helped me craft my skills as a filmmaker. But then it also, when I had venues to show some of them, I think it gave the audience an example of my work and my potential. And then like Rick said, and then at the conclusion of my short films, I would show them a trailer. And I would say, this is what I have planned next. I literally raised funds for my film $100 check at a time. I mean, it was a lot of effort, a lot of travel. I had to fly all over the place to venues that would show my short films. But that's what it took. And I think that if you're able to put together a few projects that appeal to people, that you will find that people are very eager to support projects that future projects that have promise.
We're gonna wrap it up here. Let's take one final photo.
And
we hope to see you at the film festival. Thank you.